Hi guys, John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. And I want to talk to you guys today about small items that come up on a home inspection. And if they're not found, they can lead to larger, more expensive issues later on, say 3, 4, 5 years, later when you own the home. And the job of the home inspector, in my opinion, is to tell you about the big issues, also, the material defect kind of issues that affect the house habitability, safety, occupancy, that type of thing. But it's also to give you an idea of the smaller items that can lead to expensive repairs later on. And these are not always super big items. They're not always glaring defects. They, in fact, a lot of these are kind of nuanced and they can be, on the smaller end of things. But if they're not caught or you don't repair them, they can cost you, a lot of money, later as you live or, grow into the house. So the first thing is flashing. And to give you an idea, guys, an idea of flashing is used whenever there is, say a roof meets something else, so like a roof meets a chimney, a roof meets a pipe penetration, through the roof, a lower roof meets the structure of the home, a gutter meets the roof or chimney, something like that. Flashing is required because we want to make sure that we keep water out of these very, very water prone areas, right? And much of our job as a home inspector is to think about, where are the issues going to be with this home that we're inspecting, regarding water penetration. And some things that are very, very important for a home inspector to look at is the flashing details in the home. And especially the roof flashings. There's also flashings around windows and doors too. Those flashings are not going to be really readily available to us to view. And also, a lot of the roof flashings are not going to be that accessible either. But as home inspectors here in New Jersey, we do our best to look at these flashings, to inspect these flashings, to make sure they are installed in good condition and they look good and they function well. And many times we find flashings that are just poorly installed. And, many lower roof flashings where they meet the structure of the home are poorly installed. Many flashings around chimneys. In fact, the vast majority of flashing details around a brick or masonry chimney where it protrudes the roof structure of a home are often installed incorrectly. And the issue with having flashings that are installed incorrectly is that water infiltration can occur over time. And this is not usually like a flowing water leak, like super, heavy leakage. This can be, a minor seep that can occur over the years and cause a great deal of damage or mold growth in the home. So it's really vital that we do look at these flashing details as home inspectors, because if we're negligent in that, it can cost our client dearly, down the line. Take, for example, another type of flashing that is often missing is the kick-out flashing. And the purpose of a kick-out flashing is to divert water from where the roof intersects the home and into the gutter. So it almost looks like sort of a half moon type of thing. Or it looks like almost a triangular, piece of sheet metal. And flashings are most likely, sheet metal. They can be aluminum, they can be copper, they can be galvanized. There's a lot of different materials. And we just want to make sure that these flashings are there. So to give you an idea, a kick-out flashing is definitely important, especially when we're dealing with a wood exterior clad home or a stucco clad home, because we don't want to have that water getting between the gutter and the structure of the home. So the end of the gutter and the structure of the home, we want to see a flashing there because water can penetrate that vulnerable area over time and cause a lot of damage. Not over the short term, but over the long term. So good flashing details pay dividends if they're installed over the long term, and missing flashing details cause damage over the long term. So it's vitally important that as New Jersey home inspectors here, we look at these flashing details in a way that, definitely protects our client. The next thing I want to talk about is basement seepage or efflorescence, water, clammy basement walls, that type of thing. So not every basement water infiltration problem is going to be staining, is going to be 2 inches, 3 inches of water staining on the lower basement, wall finishes, paneling. We're not going to sometimes see rusting support columns or basement stairs with water stains. A lot of it is subtle, and it's the job of the home inspector to sort of understand that these smaller problems can lead to larger problems later. I've seen homes where I've called out, efflorescence or seepage or some water stains over in the corner of a basement. My client and I told my clients in the report everything, no problem. And then they call me a year later asking me for waterproofing contractors. I go, well, we knew we obviously knew that this problem existed. It's in the report. Did you get any information regarding a water entry from the cellar? I mean, we saw the basement walls were stained. We saw the efflorescence. We saw the mold. And yet, you decided to move forward with the house anyway. And, it's our job really to let people know, or our clients understand that, not everything is going to be sort of put a siren on it. So not every basement water problem is going to be, level 10 with the bells going off. Oh, there's definitely basement water going on here. It can be subtle. And a lot of the times, sometimes homeowners will play games. Oh, yeah, there was a little seepage in the left rear corner of the basement. No problem, it's been fixed. How many times have home inspectors heard that sort of thing? And the clients, a lot of them just believe that. They just go in and believe that because, people, they don't always present reality or truth when they're talking to you about their home. And you sort of get this word salad type of thing a lot of the time. And so I don't really pay much attention to that at all. Like if an owner of a house tells me that, that we had a little bit of water in the corner, Hurricane Irene, and that's the last time, it seems like everybody wants to blame, their one area, their seepage or water entry on one of the hurricanes, in the past, and never received any water, any other time. So that's just kind of how it works. So as a home inspector here in New Jersey, we really have to be cognizant of that type of thing. And, take all that with a grain of salt, whatever the owner of the house, be respectful and that type of thing, but just understand that that's probably not the full story. That's probably not the truth. And it's up to us to find these small areas that can become larger problematic areas, like areas of efflorescence, mineral deposits. That's an area where, can be concerning. Not all the time, but definitely worthy of comment and discussion. Also, there can be water stains on the floor, water stains behind the steps. So small things like that can kind of open our eyes up to, larger problems. So small little issues that we do find in basements as far as water seepage, efflorescence, and the such, can really foretell, something larger going on or something more sinister going on, for our clients. So we definitely have to be aware of that type of thing. The next thing, and I would say 99% of clients are not aware of the grading in the home that they're thinking about purchasing. And that's fine. I mean, it's up to the New Jersey home inspector to explain that. the pitfalls of buying a home that sits below the level of the street. If the driveway is sloped to the structure of the garage and the home, that you have a backyard that's going to just deliver water to the exterior, back of the property. I get that, but you cannot, as a buyer of a home, just accept this type of thing. We really, because this, poor grading and water control measures on the outside of the home can lead to significant water entry and problems and expensive repairs and remediation, later on. So part of what a New Jersey home inspector is going to do is to look at that outside grading and kind of tell you where the weak points are, and is this more vulnerable to water entry than, say, if your house was sitting really high up on a hillside and all the water was shedding right away, right? So in a utopian kind of world, every house wouldn't have any grading issues, but the truth of the matter is excuse me, I would say 90% of the homes that I inspect have some level of improvement necessary for the grading around the house. And that's super important. The same thing can hold true with gutters and downspouts. So they're often neglected. And you guys who are buying homes, this is obviously, gutters and downspouts are not on your top of your list of priorities, right? But as a New Jersey home inspector, gutters and downspouts are right there at the top of my list in terms of water management and control on the outside of the home. So, clogged gutters can lead to water infiltration because water can sit around the outside of the home. Poorly not extended downspouts around the perimeter of the house can dump water too close to the exterior of the home. Poorly pitched gutters or improperly sized gutters can lead to water overflowing problems. And then we don't want our client to be spending a fortune on basement water control when exterior water control and these measures may be sufficient to solve the problem. So it's up to the New Jersey home inspector to really look at these important issues with downspouts and gutters. I do, because they're super important. And if you have good water control management and good gutters and downspouts that are configured correctly, it's likely to save our client money down the line and not have a big problem, not have a small problem create a big problem, later at some other time. In the same vein, small plumbing leaks can lead to big problems in houses. Just like a slight drip, or I've seen so many slight drips that are just neglected. There's a slight leak under the kitchen sink or bathroom sink, and they just let it go. And you'd be surprised how much damage and mold growth and destruction a slight drip over the course of a year or 2 years can do underneath the cabinetry, the floor, and really wreak havoc in the house. So we always report on even small water leaks, no matter how small. I've seen a lot of issues with problems with the ice maker, water lines, and saddle valves in home with leakage, and that's an area of vulnerability. So this is something that's on my mind as a home inspector here in New Jersey, and I'm sure that my colleagues also, this is on their mind. But we have to really make sure that we report on all of these small type of water leaks, no matter how small, because if they're not repaired, they're just going to continue to cause damage. And that moisture in that house can really create an area of mold growth. We create an environment that is conducive to the buildup of mold, whether that be behind a kitchen sink area, under a bathroom. Sometimes we'll see this looking upward in an unfinished basement, and we'll see a leak from a tub or toilet, or the toilet will be loose and there'll be a wet area around the toilet flange as we see inside the unfinished basement. And the worst thing is sometimes we can't see these things. and we have a finished area. So if it's a finished area, then that can be potentially leaking for a very long time before somebody notices it. So small water leaks can lead to big consequences later. So it's up to us to really try to pinpoint these small areas where we can have our client or the owner of the house, rectify these problems before they become even more of an issue. Another thing that's interesting is settlement of slabs in garages, settlement of slabs in basements. So when I'm talking about a slab, I'm talking about a basement floor slab or garage floor slab. Some of these slabs are very uneven and they have significant movement as far as cracking, and that can indicate more of a problem than we realize in terms of water possibly penetrating underneath that slab, heaving that slab, settling that slab, especially in homes with higher water tables. So we're always looking for that because that can be a sign of something more that's going on than just a slab. And generally speaking, yes, a slab problem is independent of the foundation walls, and it's usually not indicative of a major foundation problem, but it can be later on if that continues to get worse and worse. So as home inspectors here in New Jersey, we want to make sure that we visually, if possible, inspect that basement floor slab as best we can and understand if it's settling, moving, heaving. Is the cracking more than expected? Is it just normal type slab or settlement cracking? And the same is true with the slab in the garage. We want to make sure that that's not going to lead to a lot bigger problems later on for our clients. So definitely something that we look at. And attic ventilation is another thing, and many homes are poorly ventilated in the attic. Just are. They don't meet requirements for ventilation, especially older homes. There'll be a ridge vent, but no soffit vents. There'll be a mechanical, thermostatically controlled attic fan, and there'll be no other vents in the attic. So all we're doing is just pulling house air through. We're losing air conditioning, we're losing heating. So sometimes attic ventilation is not well thought out. It's not designed in a way that really makes sense. So it's important for a home inspector to call out attic ventilation that is inadequate or poor, because down the line, it can cost your client money. If we have areas of, say, ice damming forming because the attic is improperly ventilated. I don't want to get into the weeds with ice damming and go through what causes it and everything, but ventilation is definitely a contributing factor to ice damming. So we want to make sure that our attic is ventilated. Also, a poorly ventilated attic can cost our client money later on because of the heat that is generated in the attic space is going to prematurely wear that roof covering, and you're going to see a markedly lower or shorter life expectancy of that roofing material, most likely, because the attic is so hot in the summer months. It's just baking that roofing material. So that's another thing. Also, we want to make sure that our attic ventilation is adequate because we don't want to develop in the future a potential mold problem. So we want air movement in the attic space. We want the right temperatures to exist in the attic space. We don't really want things too hot, and we don't really want to have things too cold. So we're looking for, as home inspectors here in New Jersey, adequate attic ventilation that makes sense. We're not doing attic ventilation calculations, but what we really want to see is that we're meeting basic principles for attic ventilation. Is there a ridge vent? Are there adequate and open soffit vents? Are there gable vents? And does this ventilation system in this attic make sense? Is it doing its job correctly? And do I see any evidence of a failure in attic ventilation? And so attic ventilation problems can cause money to be spent later on with problems. So let's catch it now before our client has to spend money on it later, with ice damming, mold growth, poor poor performing roofing. Very, very important. Another thing is old mechanical systems. So you guys will buy a house and everything will be 25 or 30 years old as far as the furnace is 25 years old. The HVAC, same age. The water heater will be 15 years old. We'll have a larger house will have two of these units, or the boiler will be 25 or 30 years old. And that's fine if you want to do that. But part of the job of a home inspector here in New Jersey, at least I do it, is to tell you how old the equipment is and what, generally speaking, is its statistical life expectancy. So you should know that so you can make a good decision going into the house whether you want to go ahead, because you're on borrowed time with a lot of this equipment, right? So if I have a 15-year-old water heater, that's on borrowed time. That's going to exceed its design life. If I have an HVAC system, that's 30 years old. That exceeds its design life, and you're free to go ahead and purchase the home. But what you need to know, and what we can provide you, is an idea of the useful life expectancy of those appliances. And so you should budget for that. If you go in with your eyes open and understand that you have to budget for older equipment, that's one thing. But you don't want to be blindsided and say down 5 years later, you go, I never knew that I had a 30-year HVAC system, or I never knew my boiler was 28 years old, or my water heater was 17 years old, right? We see this all the time. But it's just good information to have when you're thinking about, obviously, purchasing a house. So another issue that I find, and I look at these things, and I have home inspector friends that don't really pay much attention to dryer vents. But dryer vents can be a nightmare. They are a difficult aspect of the home inspection for me. Sometimes I like to find where they're venting. I like to do that. Sometimes it's really difficult. Sometimes they're not venting properly, but the dryer can put so much steam and moisture in a home over time that can create a mold problem just by itself. So it's vital for us and for me, and I take this very seriously, is to try to find out where that dryer vent is going. And obviously we want to go to an appropriate location, exterior of the home, so it can vent that steam and moisture to the outside and not to the attic, not to the crawl space, not to anywhere else. But we're also looking at the materials that is. Is it a flex pipe? Is it a rigid pipe? Is it connected correctly? Is it too long? Does it have too many elbows? Do we need a dryer vent booster fan? There's a lot of nuances with dryer ventilation, and it's important to know that, because later on, if you're using a dryer in a home that you purchased and you're just going about your business and you're putting a lot of dumping moisture in the house, that's going to be problematic. That's going to cost you money later as far as mold growth, moisture damage, and things like that. So dryer ventilation to me is very important, and I do really try to look at it, even though it's quite challenging at times to understand that, because I'm not living in the home. I'm there just a few hours, but I have to, determine so many things. And one of those things is how the dryer is venting, what's the materials, where it's going, that type of thing. I think that's very important. So that kind of gives you an idea of some small things that home inspectors are going to look at. And those small things, if not caught, or, they can become larger things later. So I guess what I want you to understand is it's just not about the big stuff. It's not about the big ticket items. I get a lot of clients call me and they they say that, we're only looking for the big items. Well, that's great. And we can do that. But really the major, what we want to stress is that the smaller items can become larger items later on. So a home inspection is a mix of finding, the bigger stuff, the medium stuff, and also the smaller stuff that can become larger problems, more expensive problems, as you live in the home. So I hope that kind of sheds some light and it helps, a couple of you guys out there who are, thinking about buying homes in this crazy New Jersey market. But my name is John. I'm from LookSmart Home Inspections here in New Jersey. Been inspecting homes for over 25 years. Love what I do. If you have any questions about anything, about a house you own or a home that you're thinking about buying, please reach out. John from LookSmart Home Inspections here in New Jersey, and we'll see you next time.